So today, it is time to do an updated tier list ranking every single card after the June balance update. So jumping right into it, here is our tier list with 6 total tiers ranging all the way from S tier, the strongest cards in the game, down to D tier, the absolute weakest. The first card to be ranked today is the Archer Queen, going all the way up to S tier, one of the strongest cards in Clash Royale. Despite the nerf she got a couple of balances ago, still overall one of the best cards in the game. The Archer's, however, going to be a simple B tier balance card. The arrows going to be all the way up here at B plus tier. Pretty reliable splash damage, but is outperformed by a couple other spells in the game right now. Moving on, we have the Baby Dragon, one of the most well-rounded cards in the entire game. It is a flying unit, so it can't be targeted by half the units in Clash Royale. It has decent health, and it has a good damage splash attack. Now, the balloon was changed a couple balances ago, and ever since then, it hasn't truly found its place back in the meta again. There are still a couple decks that do use it successfully, but it is nowhere near the power level that it used to be. Therefore, it is going onto the B tier list. The Bandit, overall, a very good card in Clash Royale. Way up here at A tier. 3 elixir only, and an immediate pressure unit as well. Drop in the bridge, and if your opponent doesn't respond in time, it deals massive damage to a tower. Help me. Moving on to the Barbarian build, this card was nerfed in the recent balance update. However, it is still a very powerful spell and one of the best small spells in Clash Royale. However, the Barbarian Hut, Barb Hut, definitely one of the weakest cards in the game. Barbarian Hut, oh boy, our first D tier card. It is still one of the weakest cards in the entire game. Overall, very hard to ever get any sort of elixir value for. However, the Barbarians, courtesy of that buff they got in the June balance update, now moving up all the way up here to the higher end of the B plus tier. Just honestly, with that faster attack speed, they are a very strong unit to destroy all of those heavier tanks, especially the Electro Giant, which is very dominant in the meta right now. Now, moving on here to the Battle Ram, we have overall a fairly balanced win condition. However, it is not nearly the strongest card in the game. Therefore, it will land on the middle of the B tier list. The Battle Healer, however,
are you serious, my brother?
Unfortunately, all the way down here at C tier, only really ever effective in Elixir Golem decks, and even those are incredibly hard to pull off. The Bomb Tower, however, is currently excelling in the current meta. Therefore, is going all the way up to the higher end of the B plus tier, right behind the arrows. No, don't do it. Now, the Bats. This card is very strong. Therefore, going on the higher end of the A tier. Now, I know what you're thinking, but they die so easily. However, they only cost 2 elixir. You get 5 Bats that each deal an insane amount of damage and almost always force out an immediate response from your opponent. And if they don't respond to it immediately, they will devour their target in a couple of seconds. They are a relatively low risk but a high reward card, considering how low their elixir cost is and how much potential you can achieve with them. Moving on, we have the Bomber, going on the higher end of the B plus tier. Bowler, also a B plus card. Both of the B plus and the B tier on this tier list, I would consider the average of where you want a power ranking of a card to be. However, I've separated it into the lower end and the higher end of the B tier, just because there are so many cards that are in this middle part of this section. The Cannon used to be on the lower end of the tier list, but because cycle decks are dominating right now, particularly with the Electro Giant and the Mirror, the Cannon is enabling a lot of these faster cycle decks, so therefore it is going all the way up here at the higher end of B plus tier, right behind the Bomb Tower. Now, the Cannon card, slap on some wheels in that Cannon, and you have one of the best cards in the game, all the way up here at the higher end of the A tier list. I honestly think the Cannon card is one of the most underappreciated cards in the entire game. Really high health, 2 different stages, with one of them being able to pull tanks, and a very long range with a very high damage output as well. The Clone spell over here going to be on the middle section of the B tier list. Dank Prince all the way up here at A tier. Dark Goblin, however, on the higher end of the B plus tier. Earthquake right next to the arrows, I would say, in the B plus tier. Electro Dragon, I would say on the higher end of the B tier. And then we have the Electro Giant. With the recent health buff, it has skyrocketed all the way to S tier. It is one of the best cards in the entire game. Now the question here is it the Electro Giant that's overpowered, or is it the mirror, or is it the fact that champions give a 3-card cycle, allowing players to abuse cards even more? Which one of those threes is the current problem with all of the Electro Giant mirror cycle decks? I don't have the answer, but all I can say is the Electro Giant is a very strong card. The Electro Spirit gonna be all the way here at the lower end of the A tier. The Electro Wizard similarly lower end of A tier. Elite Barbarians way up here at the upper end of the B+ tier. Remember, I am also ranking the cards individually within a tier. So the higher it is in an individual tier, the higher that card is ranked over something like, for example, the Bowler. Moving on, we have the Elixir Collector, a very strong building in Clash Royale. However, the Elixir Golem, the monster version of the Elixir Collector, all the way down here at C tier, one of the weakest and the hardest cards to use in the entire game. It's basically a novelty card that can absolutely steamroll, but only in like 1 out of every 10 matchups. Moving on, we have the Executioner. Unfortunately, another weak card over here, a little bit ahead of the Battle Healer. The Fire Spirit, however, way up here on the higher end of the A tier. For only 1 elixir, deals more damage to a tower than a Fireball does. And honestly, I am shocked that it did not get nerfed in the recent balance update. It is a very powerful card. The Fireball, similarly, the single, I would say one of the best spells in the entire game in terms of firepower and sheer versatility. Moving on, we have the Firecracker, going to be on the upper end of the C tier. Now, I know the Firecracker is an annoying card to face. However, it is not very strong. The Firecracker struggles with a bunch of different clunky issues. For example, her attack speed is so slow that if you have a swarm coming in, she often just stares at it and doesn't do anything because other units attack faster, which means she is a terrible response for a lot of the popular swarm cards in the meta right now, like Skeleton Army, Graveyard, and Skeleton King. And just in case you guys don't believe me, I'm pulling up Royale API over here where we have the actual stats of the cards in Clash Royale in Grand Challenges over the past couple of days. If you're wondering why Grand Challenges, it's because Grand Challenges, everyone has access to all the cards in the game and they're all the same level, whereas on ladder you have over-leveled and under-leveled cards which can affect your stat rankings. Where would you expect the Firecracker to be? It is all the way down here near the bottom of the list, 103rd out of 107 cards, only a 33% win rate and only a 2% usage. Now the Fisherman, however, is excelling in the current meta, one of the best cards in the game right now, just because of the popularity of the Electro Giant. Having the Fisherman in there as a utility option for pulling those E-Giants off of your tower to your King Tower or just away to the other lane is a very effective unit overall. Flying Machine, way up here on the middle end of B+ tier. Same thing with the free spell, going here on the middle of the B+ tier. Furnace, all the way down here at C tier. The Giant, upper end of B+ tier. The Giant Skeleton, this is the most shocking card of this meta by all. It is all the way up here at the highest end of A tier, maybe even borderline S tier. Check out these stats. The Giant Skeleton is one of the highest performing cards in the entire game, 14% usage and a whopping 58% win rate as well. One of the highest performing cards in the entire game right now, which I was amazed to see. It hasn't been balanced for a couple of balances, and here it is, just all of a sudden skyrocketing into popularity. And I know what you're thinking, it is the boosted card of the season, so that must be the reason why. Well, here's the thing, these stats are in Grand Challenges where everyone has access to all of the cards in the game. Now moving on, here we have the Giant Snowball going all the way up here to A tier, right next to the Barbarian Barrel. Goblin Barrel gonna be on the kind of middle end of the B+ tier. Goblin Cage, one of the better buildings in the game right now, higher end of B+ tier. Goblin Drill, way up here at A tier, I would say right in front of the Fire Spirit. The Goblin Drill is a very versatile card because it can be be used as a win condition, but it can also be used on defense to pull an enemy tank. And with the popularity of the Electro Giant, having the drill in there, which doesn't actually attack itself, which means it does not engage the counterattack of the Electro Giant, makes it a very effective building for countering the current meta. Speaking of goblins over here, we have the Goblin Gang, another one of the weakest cards in the entire game. I don't know what to say about the Goblin Gang. It is just not performing right now. Maybe they should bring back the third Spear Goblin that used to be in the Goblin Gang a long time ago. It used to be 6 goblins total, but for the longest time it's been 5. Goblin Giant, got a lot of goblins over here. Goblins are going to be up here at the middle end of the B+ tier. Goblin Hut right next to the Furnace as one of the weaker cards in Clash Royale right now. And the goblins, yo, we got lots of goblins up in this business. Goblins going down here at the lower end of the C tier. Just for the most part, you're almost always better off using skeletons and set up goblins for half the elixir cost. But speaking of elixir cost, we now have the Golden Knight, the single most busted card in the game right now. In my opinion, it is beyond broken. Highest end of S tier, #1 card in the game. Check out these stats, my friends. The Golden Knight with a whopping 23% usage and a still very strong 54% win rate. Now, I know that win rate is a bit lower than some of these other cards. However, keep in mind the use rate is very high, and the higher the use rate is, the more the win rate will trend towards 50%, because you have more matchups where both players will have the Golden Knight in there, meaning one player always wins and one player always loses, which does have a major impact on the win rates of that card. Moving on, we have the Golem up here at the higher end of B+ tier. The Graveyard up here, A tier, very powerful win condition. Guards right next to the Bandit, overall very solid distraction card. Heal Spirit, I would say up here at the middle to kind of like lower quarter of the A tier. Hog Rider, highest end of B tier. Hunter, going to be on the lower end of the B+ tier. The Ice Golem up here at the higher end of the B tier as well. Ice Spirit, I would say, is the lower end of the B tier. Unfortunately, you're almost always better off using the Electro Spirit or the Fire Spirit if you are looking for a cycle card. Ice Wizard up here at the middle end of the B tier. Infernal Dragon way up here next to his baby brother. Boom, A tier. Infernal Tower is honestly performing pretty well right now. Going to be on the higher end of the B tier, right in front of the Ice Wizard. The Knight over here right now, lower end of the B tier. Lava Hound, middle of the pack for B+ tier, right next to the Giant. The Lightning Spell, going to be on the higher end of the B+ tier right now. Maybe even lower end of A tier. Lumberjack, way over here at the lower end of B+ tier. Magic Archer, definitely A tier. One of the more fun cards to use in Clash Royale. I'm going to say right next to the Bandit. Now, this is one of the most controversial cards of every card ranking, and that is the Mega Knight. I'm going to rate the Mega Knight way down here at the lower end of B tier. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Shane, the Mega Knight's crazy. The Mega Knight's overpowered. Well, here's the thing with the Mega Knight. It is only really strong and really effective at lower trophy ranges and at mid-ladder. And this is because at these trophy ranges, players have a tendency to overcommit and spend all their elixir at the bridge and build up massive pushes, which gives the Mega Knight ultimate value with that spawn damage for punishing players that overcommit. However, as you push up higher and higher in trophies, players become a lot more calculated with how they spend their elixir, and it's a lot harder to ever get those massive elixir values with the Mega Knight, and his effectiveness really starts to drop off very quickly. And just to show you some stats to back up this claim, what do you think the Mega Knight stats are on Royale API? If I scroll all the way down here, surprisingly, the Mega Knight, one of the lowest win rate cards in the entire game, only a 36% win rate, one of the lower cards in the entire game. So therefore, I am ranking on the lower end of the B tier. With that being said, though, if you are on mid-ladder, go ahead and use it. It is very powerful at that trophy range because players love overcommitting. Moving on, we have the Mega Minion way up here at the lower end of A tier, right next to the Dank Prince. Mighty Miner right here at the middle end of the B+ tier, the lowest champion in the game, but it's still overall a fairly effective card. Miner, It's funny, the non-mighty version of the miner is actually better than the mighty miner. Way up here at A tier, right next to the bandit. Mini P.E.K.K.A. way over here at the middle of B+ tier. Minion Whore, B+ tier as well. Minion's gonna be on the higher end of a B+ tier. The Mirror gonna be over here at the lower end of A tier. Mortar, this card might surprise a lot of you, but it is one of the best cards in the game. Way up here at the higher end of A tier. Honestly, with the Mortar, you get a defensive building when you need it, but also an offensive win condition that can punish any mistake your opponent makes, and it's fairly fast cycling at 4 elixir. And the true power of the Mortar lands in the ability to distract enemy tanks while simultaneously hitting your opponent's tower from over the river, or it also has the ability to splash and damage the support behind a tank, which is the primary damage dealer of any beatdown push. Moving on, we have the Mother Witch, which was recently buffed in the balance update, all the way up here at the higher end of A tier. Very strong card once again in the meta. Musketeer, upper end of B+ tier. Boom. Night Witch, even though she was buffed, it isn't very noticeable, so she's gonna go right here in the middle of the B+ tier. P.E.K.K.A. right here at the upper end of B tier. Poison Spell, I would say the middle portion of B+ tier. Prince, gonna go right here on the lower end of the B+ tier. Princess, right next to the Ice Wizard, B tier. Rage Spell, lower end of B tier, right next to the Ice Spirit. Ram Rider, right next to the Hog Rider, B tier. Rascals, however, are honestly very underappreciated. Gonna go on the middle end of B+ tier. Rocket, right here at the lower end of the B+ tier. Royal Delivery, gonna be on the upper end of B+ tier, right here next to the Musketeer. Now, the Royal Ghost might be another hot take, but I'm gonna rank it all the way here at the higher end of A tier. Honestly, I think the Royal Ghost is a very powerful card, and I think it could have got nerfed a bit more. For only 3 elixir, it is able to one-shot cards like Rascal Girls, Princesses, Archers, and because of the invisibility mechanic, even a 1 health Royal Ghost will go in there and get a couple shots on a tower if unanswered, which means it is one of the ultimate cards at applying constant pressure because it always forces out a response, often at a negative elixir trade for your opponent. Royal Giant is currently shining in the meta right now, all the way up here at the middle end of A tier, right next to the Goblin Drill. Royal Piggy is way up here at the upper end or lower end of A tier. Royal Recruit, right in the middle of B+ tier. Skeleton Army, way up here at A tier as well. Skeleton Barrel, upper end of B+ tier. Skeleton Dragons, lower end, or let's go upper end of a B tier. Boom. Skeleton King, this is another champion that is absolutely busted. Over here at the higher end of S tier, you know what? Going in front of the Archer Queen as well. I believe the Skeleton King was not nerfed enough, and I still think it's one of the most busted cards in Clash Royale. You get so many skeletons spawning out for only 2 elixir. It is absolutely insane. Skeletons way up here at the lower end of S tier. I know that they die pretty easily, but honestly, for only 1 elixir, you're almost always guaranteed value. They do decent damage output, and they are a good distraction card as well, meaning they are a very low risk, but really high reward card if you pull them off effectively. Sparky, way over here, middle end of B+ tier, right next to the Goblin Giant. Spirit Goblins, all the way up here at A tier, right in front of the Fire Spirit. Tesla Tower, unfortunately, is not doing too hot in the meta right now, so it will be on the lower end of the B tier. Lock Spell, despite the fact that it was nerfed in the recent balance update, is still a very effective card, right next to the Barbarian Barrel. 3 Musketeers over here, and the A tier as well. Tombstone, one of the best buildings in the game, right next to the Fire Spirit. Tornado, this will be our final S tier card of the video. I believe the Tornado spell is fundamentally busted. It gives the NATO user the ability to place your opponent's cards where you want them. So even if your opponent places cards in a strategic position, you have the ability to rewrite all of that with 1 3 elixir card. And you also have the ability to activate King Tower in a wide variety of scenarios as well. Just overall a very busted card. Valkyrie, going to be on the higher end of the B+ tier. Wall Breakers, once again, again, right here, lower end of A tier. The Witch, unfortunately, is going to be on the lower end of the C tier. Same thing with the Wizard. Just overall, there's better options that exist in the game that basically do what they do, but for a cheaper elixir cost or just better. Expo, unfortunately, B tier, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. Zaspel will be the higher end of B tier, and the Zappies will be on the lower end of the A tier, right next to the Electro Wizard. And there you have it, my friends. There is my new tier list ranking all the cards after the June update. I did change my tier list ranking system a bit. I've added the B+ tier instead of a lower A tier. I believe a lot of these cards right in the middle right here are fundamentally like balanced and overall effective cards that aren't overpowered or underpowered. Anything above the B tier is stronger than average, and anything below B tiers, both of these B tiers, is a lot weaker than average. But there it is. Do you guys and girls agree or disagree with anything on my list? If you could change 5 cards on my list, what would they be and where would you change them to go? That's it, guys and girls. Thank you for watching. We shall see you all in the next one.